Hi, I'm Jess.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
And welcome to ReDIScover, a space where we celebrate the childlike qualities that make up the essence of who we are while engaging with the world around us, both authentically and imaginatively.
Nothing is off the table here, and we talk a little bit...
or a lot.
About, well, everything.
Around here, we're always rediscovering, sharing empowering stories, and connecting our hearts and minds with every facet of life.
While we, of course, talk about the real stuff,
we invite you to be a part of the conversation as we broaden our perspectives, release limitations,
and grow to create our most joyful and fulfilling lives together.
So come along with us as we rediscover all the best parts of you
and bring a little bit of magic into your day.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
And welcome back to this week's episode of ReDIScover. We are continuing our month of leaning into feminine empowerment. We hope you enjoyed last week's episode all about periods. We thought that was a really enriching conversation. This week, we are going to do something that is a little bit more whimsical and fun, but I think is still rooted in being proud to be a woman and looking at examples of what that looks like in a type of media that we love, which is Disney movies.
I feel like this is a topic that we inadvertently talk about a lot. These women in these Disney films are kind of people that we've emulated from time to time, or that many of us like look to for strength and encouragement. And I'm excited to dive into kind of what they mean to us now and like how they are, I don't know, representatives of this kind of like new era that we're in, and like the way that, you know, the role of women and our place in society is evolving. I think they're a little ahead of their time, and that's exciting.
They are, because some of the characters we're going to talk about today aren't even from the movies that are being created now in 2022. Like some of these examples are from back in the 90s or early 2000s or, you know, over the span of time. And I think that these characters have been really progressive in the sense of defying the gender norms by following their heart and being who they are on the inside and letting that shine outward and breaking the stereotypes of what their quote unquote place should be in their story or in their society.
And I think too that the entire journey that each of these characters goes on, their own story and how it plays out, is really like what ReDIScover is all about. It's all about pursuing authenticity. That's the whole plot of any Disney movie, right? The protagonist gets to a place where they feel that they know better than ever before who they are and why they're on this earth, and like what they're meant to be and do, and the good that they are able to contribute. So that's just super aligned with the conversations we're always having. And I think in that pursuit of authenticity for these women, especially, the biggest challenge has been not only defying the norms and the kind of like institutionalized roles that they have been given by society, but sometimes even defying the people who do love them and have their best interests at heart, solely because those people too have been indoctrinated into this way of living that they see as something they don't want to perpetuate.
The movie that came to mind for me for this topic immediately, because it's really rooted in the society and the structure of the gender roles, it's very much a drive to the whole story, is the movie Mulan and the character Mulan. As we all know, Mulan is from a Chinese background. And at the beginning of the movie, she is going through the motions of what it's like to be a woman in her culture and her society. And she goes to the matchmaker and she gets all dolled up in makeup and a dress. And the reality of it is she feels very out of place. She feels pretty miserable, but this is what girls are told to do in her culture and her society. And this movie is really interesting because it breaks that autopilot mode. She looks around and no other girls are speaking up. Like they're all just doing it and they're going through these motions. And she feels like she's dishonoring her family, which the reality is she would be dishonoring herself if she was to go on this path. And the moment when the Chinese government came to enlist her father into the war, the gender roles actually not only disadvantaged her in the sense that she could not replace him because she is a woman, But they also disadvantaged him because although he had health problems and he was very old, he was a man, and that was his gender role that he needed to take part of. The whole movie is just so interesting. They even have a song called I'll Make a Man Out of You. So it's very, very gender driven. Like men are supposed to be strong. Men are supposed to be fighters and do all these things, but she completely defies that and goes through her training and is just as strong as the other men around her, and ultimately saves her country as a byproduct of her completely like bypassing these institutionalized norms. And Mulan is just so empowering, I think, to me especially, and I'm sure to a lot of you. She is so authentic to who she is, and it turns into like being so honorable, and she just serves herself. She's able to really like lean into herself and her strength, and she gets to honor her family after all and her entire country. And it's a really beautiful story. She didn't let society conform her, and she was able to come out on the other side of it with new friends, with new outlooks on life, and a whole new perspective. And I think that's really beautiful.
I think it's interesting that you bring up that the film is in and of itself very gender driven because of this very linear path that each gender is very like bipartisan. You are a male, these are the things you embody, you must do. You are a female, these are the things you must embody, you must do. And nobody stops to consider for a second that a female might not want to exist in that space or vice versa. And it literally took to the point where Mulan's father, was not physically able to fight in the war, and Mulan was faced with this very real and raw and horrible situation where she realized, either my father's going to go to war and die, or I have to do something drastic. And you see her continuously fed up to that point in the film with just these really binding gender roles. And I think it's interesting that it finally came to the point where sometimes we do face those situations where we just have to like eat or be eaten, sort of. We have to decide, like, okay, we're, if we're put between a rock and a hard place, like where do I stand? Am I willing to defy everyone around me in the name of what I know is true or right?
And she risked her life for that.
Yeah. And she did it for her family too. And I think that that's a mark of her loyalty and her strength. But I would argue that, anyone else who's fighting that war was forced to do so by proxy of being a man. Mm-hmm. And she made this very difficult choice to, not only put herself at very personal risk, because she also wasn't trained for it. She, wasn't as strong as those men. She had no concept of how to fight. And I think that's the even braver moment. And those, I think, are the moments. Obviously, this is a very like over dramatized example, but it's really not, because if we look at, the world we're living in right now, there are women fighting in the Ukraine, mm-hmm. and they did not think that was going to be their reality. And they did not think that was going to be a choice they were faced with, or at least maybe they didn't, or hopefully they didn't. No one wants to expect that will be their life, but, and there they are. And it's a hard image to construct in your mind, because you have to take away the cartoon and put very real people with very real lives and families in that position. But mm-hmm. It's proof of the fact that women, when faced with adversity, can do anything.
Yeah, exactly. I think women are severely underestimated, and mm-hmm. this movie translates to reality in the sense of the fact that women really can step up in times of need and in normal times as well.
Yeah. Especially, I think, when our beliefs are called into question, and because I think women are so strong-minded, and I don't mean that in the negative, like, oh, you're so strong-willed, you're so stubborn. I mean genuinely strong-minded. And forgive all the stereotypes that or generalizations that we might make along the way. This is just my personal experiences and perceptions. But I think that women are very strong-minded because we, more so than men, have had to sort of cultivate and piece together what we are along the way, because we weren't inheriting a persona, which is honestly sort of sad for men, that a lot of men inherit this persona. Like, you must be strong, you must be the breadwinner, you must be the bold one, whatever. We've sort of seen these drastic changes in what society expects of women in recent years. And so now our generation's sort of like piecing together, like, what does that look like for me?
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever beliefs we do choose to embody become very strong. And I think we're willing to, do whatever it takes to protect them or defend them, which makes us excellent at arguing as well.
I think we just are able to think about it clearly, and not even just always logically either, intuitively, as we always say. I think
Yes.
Mulan following her path was a very intuitive choice, because of course, like we mentioned, like, she could have been severely punished or killed for that choice, but she knew in her heart that it was the absolute right thing to do, regardless of the consequences. She absolutely knew that was the right path to choose. And she's not the only one who is able to tune into that and authentically follow the path to their greater good. If you want to segue into.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I'm going to use that as a segue. Gosh, so many. There are so many, but I'll kind of get into my number one Disney feminist / just all around best gal. I think Belle is obviously no surprise to anyone that she's getting brought up. Obviously less severely, because there was no paradigm shift as far as conflict goes. But I think that the situation in which we find her at the very beginning of the film is sort of, you immediately know that she's the odd one out. Even like the color schemes indicated, it's autumn all around. Everyone's wearing these like brown shades and oranges. And then there's this girl in a blue dress. She stands out from the crowd, and to the people in her town, she stands out because she's beautiful, but they only kind of take her at face value, and everything to do with her is very skin deep, and everything else about her is just speculation, because nobody ever really takes the time to get to know her. So she feels very isolated, and she doesn't ever conform to, their more shallow way of living, because she sees that it's unfulfilling and that it's meaningless. And she, always is like yearning for adventure and yearning to see what else is out there, because she, I think, believes that there is someone or something that will affirm who she knows she is. And she never loses that along the way, even when everyone else is sort of, ostensibly making fun of her and not really concealing it. And she sort of lets everything brush off. And I think that's important to note, is like the little comments people make. She's an intelligent person. They're not going unnoticed. She just refuses to give them any weight. That in her pursuit of authenticity, she was able to remain true to that kind of still small voice inside her that told her, this is who you are. And it doesn't matter that this is not how they see you. It doesn't matter that who you are is not something that they value. Your most authentic self and your most beautiful life will encapsulate you getting to be who you are. I think that's something that is hugely inspirational to kind of this season that we as women are all experiencing right now, where we are able to explore, other career opportunities or lifestyles or things that definitely go against the get married and have 2 kids and a white picket fence by the time you're 31 or whatever it is. And I think she found that affirmation when she found a bunch of misfits in an enchanted castle. She found souls who saw her, and of course saw that she was beautiful, but saw so much more in her than that. They saw that she was unique and special and brave and daring. And that ultimately ended up being her power. It ended up being what saved everyone and everything. And it ended up also being her capacity to love and see the good in someone who couldn't see the good in themselves. And yes, it's a love story. And I know Disney movies get criticism for like, oh, they always end up with someone at the end. But I think that's her superpower, if you will, is so many of us, you know, and we also, like the townspeople, see people at face value, we sort of categorize them or compartmentalize, and it may seem soft or maybe even traditionally feminine that she, you know, put up with, you know, Beast's temper and his moodiness, but she was able to see through it and understand that there was something underlying there that even he had lost patience for. And I think that that is the like intuitive power of women that is so intrinsic to who we are, is that ability to see the best in people when they can't see it in themselves. I think that that's so powerful.
Adversely, I will say that she is very intuitive in calling out the worst in people too, whereas she gets really, or she gets kind of cornered into a box when Gaston views her as the most beautiful woman in town. Like, he completely objectifies her and only sees her as someone that he wants to marry, and even kind of makes comments like about her being a woman and reading all the time. And all these other girls are fawning over him. And, you know, everyone's like, oh, Gaston's so strong. Like, he's the macho man in town. And she just completely sees right through that. And I'm very glad she stepped out of that gender role of just getting married to Gaston because he was the most attractive and she's the most attractive. Like, it's just, their personalities just did not go together. It's really an uncomfortable position to be in, to have somebody like Gaston objectifying you. And because she's able to weed out that does not align with her, and she's able to step away from it without letting everyone's judgment bring her down, she's able to create a life for herself that is more true to her at the end of the day.
And I think it's important to note too that she, you know, she didn't hate him. And I think that that's where the lines of feminism get a little crossed sometimes, and everything gets lost in translation. She recognized him for what he was and what he valued, and recognized that she did not align with those values. And she was never unkind. She was just resolute. And I think that that was something to him that was shocking, because, you know, women were never able to resist his charm. And meeting a woman who knew her own mind, he didn't even realize that that was what was probably so attractive about her.
Right.
To him. But also so infuriating because he couldn't just have his way. I don't know.
Interesting. But
I don't know.
It's a good example.
That's speculation. Gaston never actually told me that himself. I just...
Speaking of the gender role of marriage, I think we should transition into our next character. And this one is huge, because her path as a royal princess in her culture, religion, society, kingdom, if she was going to grow up and continue on her path, she would have to marry, and she would become queen. And of course, we're talking about Jasmine from Aladdin. So if Jasmine wanted to carry on as the queen of Agrabah, she would have to get married to a man. And not only that, but she had to marry a royal and another prince. And this was just a really tough position for anyone to be in, because I think she woke up to the sense that just wasn't going to work for her. Like she said, if I do marry, I want it to be for love. So she felt completely whole on her own. I think she felt confident in the sense that she could rule the kingdom on her own. And of course, having someone by her side would be nice, but that's not the way that the old laws saw it or her father saw it, but because that's just how it's always been. So not only did she hesitate to get married, but when she found someone she really loved, he was not part of the socioeconomic class that she was in, or position that she was in. And thankfully, I'm really happy that Sultan of Agrabah was so open to allowing the laws to change so she could pursue authentically being with Aladdin and getting married to someone who wasn't already a prince technically. And she got to marry because she wanted to. And I think being able to choose to get married was such a game changer for her. And she didn't do it just because she was forced. And she needed to do what she did in that movie. She needed to leave. She needed to find new people. She needed to find herself and see more of the world. And
yeah. And another really relevant storyline, because there are, cultures and religious groups that do kind of place women in that even today, which seems, in our Western culture, so bizarre in that position of like, well, this is your role. You have to get married and bear children. And that's the whole point of your existence. So carry on. Yeah. Which seems like cuckoo bananas to us now, but that's a testament to how far we've come.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think for Jasmine, we all love when she's just like, I am not a prize to be won. Like, yes, girl, you are correct. A woman worthy of being chosen by a man for something other than her riches or her status or her looks, but also to have the right to choose someone for their character, for who they are, for whatever reasons she might devise to choose somebody. But I think also for her to recognize that she had a voice, she had something to say, something to contribute. She grew up, at the feet of the Sultan. He is her father. She grew up in a position where she was able to, probably pick up a lot of what was going on in her kingdom and the state of things. And she wanted to have a political voice because she had spent her entire life as kind of a pillar of Agrabah. And so it seems only right that, like, what king or prince in this case, obviously coming from some other country, gets to take her spot and start making all these decisions and acting like he owns the place. I mean, that's a huge slap in the face to someone who spent their entire life there, So I think for her to not only fight for her right to choose a partner in life, but to fight for her right to rule and her right to, exercise that voice. And also that standing in that knowing, that capital K knowing that we talk about all the time, that knowing of, I have something to contribute. I have the people's best interest at heart. I have compassion for them. Like, how is that not evident? And I think her willingness to kind of sacrifice everything just proves her loyalty and her, I'm going to use the word stubborn here, her stubborn diligence. I think stubbornness gets a bad rep, but I think in this case, and in so many cases with women, we are called stubborn or hot-headed or defiant or bratty, whatever, divergence of the term you want to use. And the reality is that, maybe we're digging our heels in because things need to change. Maybe we're digging our heels in because we have something to say and we've been shushed for too long. She just said, no, I'm done.
Yeah. Jasmine and Mulan changed structures that were in place for hundreds of, potentially thousands of years before them, because they followed that inner voice and that inner knowing and were strong about it. And
yeah,
you don't have to change structures to be an empowered woman, but you can, like, the potential is there, which is so inspiring for people to watch. Like, of course, these are movies, like they're movie storylines, but the themes are there and the messages are there. I mean, look at our generation now, like we're all coming into our own, but a lot of people our age and people that I'm friends with are strong women. And we've had stories like that to grow up with. So I will be excited to see how little girls today are going to grow up and step into their power as well.
Yeah, I honestly just want them to not even consider that those realities had ever happened. Like, I want it to be even more bizarre to them than it is to us to think about, because of course we think about it, but we know that it is true in some places. I want it to be bamboozling to everyone.
Baffling.
Tiana, who obviously didn't rebuild the structure of her society, though I'm sure she would have jumped at the opportunity.
Of course she would.
She stood out in carving her own path in a place that was not only divided by gender roles, but there was a serious class difference that was working against her as well. There was Lottie's charmed life that she lived in her stately mansion, Mardi Gras parties and her ball gowns and her endless resources. And Tiana, who was scraping by, working so hard for every penny she earned just to invest all of that in her own future and her own dreams. And we see like direct derogatory belittlement, not necessarily from someone who's considered the villain of the story. Dr. Facilier is the villain, but he doesn't exactly discourage Tiana's dreams necessarily. Tiana, when she goes and tries to buy the building for her restaurant, she's getting like heckled by the guys who own the building, and they're trying to cheat her.
That's almost the worst part of the movie. Worse than the villain is these old guys, like, and she's working so hard, and she is, this strong woman with a vision. And because she's a woman, she's not taken seriously by these men due to her gender and due to the fact that she doesn't already have riches. Like, it's so incredibly frustrating, but she believes in herself wholeheartedly that she's going to make this dream come true. She's getting this restaurant, and as discouraging as they are, she doesn't let them keep her down. Her mom always wanted Tiana just to like meet her Prince Charming, and then you'll be happy. But I think Tiana, her dream was to have this restaurant, but like her Prince Charming, Naveen, was kind of the bonus to that.
I think it's insidious, right? Like these little moments that even we experience where in our Western culture, obviously in our lives, in our experiences, nobody tells us we have to marry someone in order to, keep our job title. We thankfully don't experience those realities. However, we do experience these little insidious things from day to day. How many times have you taken your car to get fixed and you are taken advantage of or talked down to by the AAA guy, or by the person at the car repair shop, or by the person at the auto parts store when you're buying windshield wipers? Like, whatever the situation is, the assumption is little miss doesn't know what she's talking about. She doesn't know what she's doing. You can't do this, or you don't know what you're talking about. Even topics like money. How many times has it been presumed that women don't know how to invest or how to save or how to do their taxes, or what that looks like,
Yes. And did you know that less women invest than men? And also,
I did.
And also, women don't negotiate for higher salaries than men because they keep it small and they don't want to ask for more, but there's more money available. So ladies, let's start negotiating and let's start investing, because we're breaking the gender norms here.
Yeah, but it's so true in that situation that Tiana found herself in. And then even her mother, who obviously has her best interests at heart, her mother wanting her to just like settle down or find her prince.
But how many times have we been told that? Oh,
my gosh.
Yes. I want you to find your future husband. Like,
all the time, Jess, all the time in my 26 years. And it's people, it's my mom. She does it. It's people, in my family, people close to me. And I know that they have my best interests at heart. I know that they want me to be happy. I know that these words aren't coming from a place of malintent. It's because it's what they know. It's what they were taught. They were told you got to get married and have kids and blah, blah, and they all did it.
And then you'll be happy.
And then you'll be happy. And it turns out you had to create your own happiness anyway. Not to say that cute little kids don't make you happy. Of course they do. But that's not the only happiness that exists. And Tiana knew that her dream was to open a restaurant. And so she, not disrespectfully, told her mom, like, I don't have time for these frivolous things. Like, I've got a dream I'm working for, and I'm going to make it happen. And I think that belief in her own ability was what ultimately saw her through all of the trials she faced. But I think that her story, more so than some of the others that we've discussed, is a more accurate depiction of what we are still going through. And that those little moments where you feel small, you feel less than, you feel taken advantage of or patronized because you just happen to be a woman. And infuriating. And those little things I think are more infuriating than some of the bigger things, because those little things are the like underbelly that you don't see that just perpetuates this patriarchy that we just need to abolish.
Yeah, it's like the subliminal mess. It's like this collective matrix that everyone buys into. It's these same thoughts, beliefs, and patterns that have been around for just thousands and thousands of years. And I'm grateful that they're coming to the surface and we're waking up to them. But I agree. I do think Tiana's is the most like relatable in real life type of patronizing.
And Merida was another of my honorable mentions, just for the obvious reason that the idea that a group of men would do archery in front of each other in order to marry me is just abysmal. Like, I can't imagine sitting on that little throne thing on the sidelines and just watching these morons just try to like hit a bullseye in order to spend the rest of their life with me. Like, excuse me, hold on.
I
have a few questions.
Yeah, that's positively primeval, if you ask me.
Yes, it is positively primeval. And I just can't imagine. So yeah. I'll be shooting for my own hand as well. Thanks very much. Votes for women.
But yeah, so I think those sum up our empowered feminine icons of Disney movies. There are plenty more, trust us, whether they're obvious examples or more subliminal examples. And I'm glad that we got to touch on both in this episode because they're all equally important and they're all equally incredible.
Yeah. Incredible women doing extraordinary things. Remember when we thought that was a monthly theme, but actually it's just the entire theme of our podcast.
Suddenly that's ReDIScover's subheading.
Whoops. Not sorry about it. I really do love that lately though, our conversations have been very like late night at the sleepover conversations that you have. And I love when you guys message us other things, like you have a thought while you're listening and you DM us about it. So keep that up because I love having the opportunity to continue these conversations with all of you. Mm-hmm. It's just one big endless sleepover, y'all.
It really is. Rediscovering life together. We hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I love when we take the Disney movies and get to look at them through the feminine empowerment lens or the spirituality lens or relationship lens. Like it is so cool. And I think that there's just so much character development that goes into these movies, and these characters really come to life and seem like actual living, breathing examples of people that we can relate to and perspectives we can dive into. So stay tuned. Next episode is going to be a new theme as usual. So come on back for that in 2 weeks on Tuesday. That wraps up March already. That's so crazy.
If you couldn't tell at the time we're recording this, we have no idea what our next theme
Surprise. So come back to see what we come up with because I have no idea.
To see what we come up with. But I think there are so many times that we think we have a theme in mind and we pivot, and sometimes we pivot like right before we record. So I think it's fun to just let inspiration strike and see where it takes us. And we're just so grateful that all of you come along for the ride.
Absolutely. So share this episode with someone you love. Write us a review on Apple or Spotify if you have time. We super appreciate it. Mm-hmm. And come on back next time because we'll have a whole new topic to chat about and it's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening and we will talk to you next time.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of ReDIScover.
If you haven't already subscribed, hit that button and join the ReDIScover fam.
If you're like us and you have opinions about everything, leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. Your positivity inspires our creativity, and we love hearing from you.
Join us every other Tuesday for brand new episodes full of rediscovery.
And each month has its own unique theme, so be sure to catch them all.
Follow us on Instagram at positively.kristen and at JessicaFaye508.
And check out Jess's blog at theroadjesstraveled with 1L.com.
Until next time,
bye!